Well, it's Thanksgiving and a day away, and football and turkey and family gatherings and traveling, and off we are. And I wanted to make sure I got my Live with Tony in today before my day dissipates. And I wanted to talk about an article I was reading yesterday. So I had a few minutes yesterday to do some reading, and I love this Science Focus magazine. It is one of my favorites. They have good short articles, but they really get you to the point. And here they had an article on the brain and what it does. And here are some pictures of the brain and the different compartments and things that it does. And I just found it interesting. And then I really enjoyed a piece here on, do we really just use 10% of our brains? And I found that they did probably the best explanation of this notion that we use 10% of our brains that had been published and written about so many times and debated and argued. And then they had a picture of how our brains work. So I really enjoyed reading this article, and I thought I'd share some of the highlights of it with my Live with Tony audience this morning. So off we go. Let me just start with the first part, and that is one of them that we've been most focused on, which is the hippocampus. Now, why do we focus on the hippocampus? It's some science reports say that it looks like a seahorse. So anytime I go to an aquarium and I look at the exhibit with the seahorse, I think of our hippocampus. I'm not sure that you're going to be able to see the hippocampus here in this picture, but they suggest that it looks like a seahorse. So you can't see it very well in the graph here. Now, what does the hippocampus do, and why is it so popular? It's a curved part of the limbic system that's the primitive brain that is associated with memory and decision making. And so what I have found fascinating is the hippocampus is malleable, meaning you can teach yourself some systems and skills to improve your memory. And that's what the USA Memory Championship is all about. Here goes our front door alert. And so the hippocampus is important to realize that there are things, skills that we can learn, there are exercises and practices that we can do that can improve it. And look at what I have on today. I put on my hippocampus, so my brain shirt today, which is one of my shirts that I got from one of our memory folks. So I wear it, at least once a week, and I love it. But the hippocampus does that, and it's part of the limbic system. So when you talk about the limbic system, you got to go to the amygdala. It's an almond-shaped component of the limbic system that has a role in stress, emotions, and memory. So you say, wow, so now we got the hippocampus and we have the limbic system, or the amygdala, and we need to learn a little bit about what our emotions can help us do, and how by improving our emotional response to how we want to retain and remember something, how it all connects and how it's all a part. And how do you teach people the different elements of the limbic system, which is the amygdala, and get their emotions involved and reduce their stress levels? How do you get them to learn some of the skills that we teach on the hippocampus? Which then is another way of saying, my goodness, you know what? We can, in fact, improve our functions of our human brain. And here's what an interesting sentence they had. Everything we know about the world, everything we know about the world and ourselves is all up in here. And there's nothing worse than seeing people with early dementia and Alzheimer's, and their biggest worry is actually not knowing who their family is and their loved ones or their spouse or their kids. Experts are more of the mind that we need all of our brains, not just not all of the time. So now we get to all of our brain that we've got in here. Do we really just use 10% of our brain? And I found it very, very interesting as we talked about this and reading it. It says, no, it's a myth. While it may be true that if you took a snapshot of an activity in the brain, then less than 10% would appear to be firing at a given moment. So we have a whole brain here, And at any given time, if we were going to do an MRI, which they do now more and more, which we see in some of the studies that Michael Datino did at Columbia University, you can say, okay, but less than 10% would appear to be firing at a given moment. So we got this whole brain we want to use, but maybe at one given moment, there's only a part of it being utilized. But it's certainly not the case that the 90% of the other part of the brain at that point is useless, and it's not being any benefit to us or an asset. That makes no sense, since evolution is pretty good at getting rid of bits of the body that don't make any useful contribution. We no longer have tails, fur, or claws. So the brain is constantly being pruned. And what the science world, the neuroscience world has told us today is if we're not exercising our brain, there's a pruning that goes on through our dendritic spines and our neurons. And so when we're not utilizing them and we're not exercising our brain, right, what do we do here? We lose muscle if we're not exercising. We lose muscle around our gut if we're not exercising. So this is suggesting that if you're not utilizing and stretching your brain, then you begin to lose, in this case, they're talking about fur on animals or fur on humans. We lost it because we don't have it anymore. We don't have claws. So in our brain, that same principle applies. We lose the ability to get and utilize our whole brain because if we're not utilizing it. It's like the body says, why do we need it? Let's just get rid of it. And the problem we have with memories and our brain power is we may be losing the wrong parts of our brain. Experts are more of the mind that we need all of our brains, just not at the same time. Research has found that mentally draining tasks divert energy away from other processes, and as the brain has a limited energy supply, this puts a cap on the number of tasks it's capable of carrying out in a simultaneous level. So this brings me to one of the principles we teach about in memory. First of all, do you believe you can improve your memory? Are you willing to take the time to learn what the skills are that can help you to do that? But more importantly, will you invest in yourself to take the time to practice? And through the 24 years that we've done the USA Memory Championship, we've certainly got thousands of people that have done exactly that and can demonstrate to you, my goodness gracious, as they've gotten older, their amazing abilities to remember things like lists of numbers, like streams of to-do lists, like how to get through remembering people's names and faces, are all skills that they can learn to improve their lives as they get older. Now, the science is still bouncing around, well, if you make it to 65, then there's nothing you can do, and I keep arguing that there is certainly something you can do, and how many seniors just believe there's nothing they can do, and therefore they just collapse and just wait for the world to happen to them. Where, as opposed to my approach to it is being more assertive and more proactive, and being more aggressive, and be the early adopters and adapters to the potential that you have actually up in here, that at least we can exercise our neurons, right? So now we're looking at our neurons, and we're looking at how we can exercise our brain and build some strength around that. And there's not enough of science in the world today that documents and proves that. So I think of it as we're living in an age where the folks that are in their 50s and early 60s that practice these things will be the early people that adopt these principles, and they're like the lab experiments that prove that there are things, in fact, that you can do to improve your memory. And in fact, that as you get older, I always think of Jack LaLanne, right? And Jack LaLanne, seeing him on TV and being a part of the Jack LaLanne Fitness Center at one point in my life, proved that, you know what, your muscles don't have to deteriorate in your 90s. And God, was he an example of that? And more science today is saying, God, our life expectancy can even go further in what we can do into our hundreds. Well, this same principle applies to our brains. These same principles apply to the brain. And so as I read through this, I get a great amount of optimism and a great amount of feeling that the work we're doing today is going to be groundbreaking. And someday we'll be looking back at the USA Memory Championship, we'll be looking back at the mental athletes that have participated in it, and we'll be looking at them as the pioneers that broke grounds that we never thought were possible. So to me, it's exciting. And at this time of Thanksgiving, I am so thankful for the day that I got to meet Tony Buzan and got to find somebody that taught me things about my own intelligence and my own abilities that I never ever thought possible, which leads me to the closing. Is, do you think there are things that you're capable of doing that maybe no one has just encouraged you or tapped into you to get you to believe that you can do it? And so you're capable of more than we ever thought possible. And how our nurturing and our environments and our educational systems just don't give us that unlimited potential that we have up here for each and every one of us, given the proper nurturing and the proper education and the cheerleader and the support system around you that can make a whole world of difference of what life can be. And that's my wish, that before I move along, I'm able to influence enough of people to bring this pioneering effort to the foreground and get people to realize there is so much more we can do with our own capacities than we ever thought possible. So with that, have a nice day tomorrow. Enjoy your dinners. And my only suggestion is, I've learned not to overeat on Thanksgiving Day. A small piece of pumpkin pie is always fine to close it out. But I don't overdo the turkey and the stuffing. I do eat more vegetables than I used to. And I'm trying to do all the things that I can to reach my maximum potential. We'll see you on Friday. Have a good week and a good holiday tomorrow. Enjoy your football games, and hopefully well, all of our teams can't win, so hopefully Dallas does not win.